Peace and grand rising to the sovereign, original, indigenous, ancient, natural, divine heirs. Today is August the 18th, 1442 on the ancient moon calendar and 1441 on the ancient sun calendar, 2021 on the Greco-Roman calendar. All rise and stand. This is a sovereign, ancient, Article 3, living Moorish American, Moroccan consular court action. I am Sovereign Living Justice Pauline Denise Ritchie in capitis diminutio nolo, in red ink, in propria persona sui juris, in proprio solo, and in proprio heredes. My free chosen sovereign appellation is Light Tajiri Bay in capitis diminutio nolo, in red ink, in propria persona sui juris, in proprio solo, and in proprio heredes. We have some excellent information today that I'm excited about. Hopefully you will find the information to be excellent as well. There is some documents that we've been looking at lately from Havana, Cuba, that our prophet Noble Judicialle was party to, as he was there and these documents were presented to him. And we've been looking at the documents in the historical records, and we found some other information with regard to us being the creditors to all of the nations of the earth, but it's on a practical application. So what we're going to look at today is ancient Morocco being the creditors and what happens with debtors and what they did with debtors back then and how that whole dynamic worked, where if someone was a debtor, what happened with regard to them going back to their other nations where they were debtors, or coming to Morocco where we are the creditors. As we know, when we thought that we were citizens, and many Moors are dealing with this right now, they're coming to terms with the concepts and the precepts. We know that when we thought we were citizens, there was debt being shifted to us in black ink and capital letters. And then when we proclaimed our sovereign status, now we're working through and working out in our minds, okay, we're not debtors, we're the creditors. So let's go ahead and see how we have to work that out on how that goes, because we know that when we switch money systems, like we've just done recently, then anything that had to do with the previous money system is no longer applicable. That's why Moorish sovereign delarium is so important. And that is how this change was taking place over time. Even previously, back in the early 1900s and the late 1800s, when the money system was starting to switch over, especially at 1871 and forward, you could see the money system starting to switch. The corporations were already saying, okay, we're not under the gold and silver, we're corporate now, and we're in black ink and capital letters, so we can start taking things and doing things and producing things and all of that in black ink and capital letters. And anyone who's in black ink and capital letters, they have to go by our rules now. They don't have to go by the Moors rules, where the gold and silver, where, you know, everyone was creditors. So I want to start first with something our prophet said. The majority of the oral statements and hadith that are attributed to Prophet Noble Judicialle are commercial in nature. Okay, so believe it or not, the prophet was talking about finance and commerce and merchant activities the whole time. Nationality has everything to do with that, because when you are the heir to all land, all natural resources, and all commerce, all of that has to do with how the land is accounted for and how the natural resources are accounted for and how the commerce is exchanged and kept track of. And so the money system determines how it's going to be maintained, how the exchanges are going to take place, and how the accounting is going to work, and who is responsible for that accounting. So now we have taken the responsibility, we being all Moors who agreed to unify with us and use Moorish sovereign delarium, we have agreed to account for our own vast estate. Okay, so our prophet said, and these are some hadiths that he put forth that are attributed to him. Let me put it that way. So Brother E. Thomas L., this is hadith number 130. Brother E. Thomas L. said that the Holy Prophet, noble judicialle, said, all nations will turn against the United States one day. And that's the United States Corporation Company. Okay. And hadith 131 says, the Holy Prophet said, one day the United States will not be able to do any business unless they do it through the Asiatic. That's commerce. The Prophet saw commerce happening. He knew that all of this was going to be happening. And if you look around right now, it's Grand Rising. It's being set up that way. Okay? It's being set up that way. But that's something that we have to do. That's not anything that anyone else can do. No one's going to hand anything to us. We actually have to take it and proclaim it and declare it. So how have we done that? We have done that with Moorish sovereign delarium, with proclaiming the gold standard, with liening the corporation so that they cannot move without our permission, and in fact, liening the corporations and sending them on their way to Guantanamo Bay while we and the subjects work out this creditor-debtor situation and know that all Moors are the creditors and there are no other creditors than the Moors, and all corporations are debtors. What are the subjects? That leaves the subjects, and the subjects, they don't have any debt as long as they stay under our protection. Okay, so we are a protectorate nation of the subjects, which means we have to be free from debt. We have to know that we're free from debt too. So let's take a look at how that is to happen relative to the things that are happening today. Because if we look around today, we have been given so many hints by the subjects about which way to go and how to navigate our freedom. One of those is, as we know, and some may not agree with me, but we can prove it. It's all we have to do is look at it, is the COVID-19, the coronavirus piece. That piece was magnified. Now, we're not saying that a coronavirus does not exist. What we're saying is that it was magnified and blown up to earthwide or worldwide magnitude in order to cover up the economic issues that are changing, that have changed. That gave us an opportunity to switch things around and declare who we really are. And so when you look at the language that's been used where coronavirus is concerned, they've been talking about quarantine this, quarantine that, and all of that. So now I want to bring forth the definition of quarantine, and we need to see this because there's a definition that was not put forth in the media that only we can bring forth. Okay? So quarantine is a noun, and it says here, quarantina, a space of 40 days. And again, quarantine just means 40. That's what it means. It means 40 days. It means it's a time period. It is a derivative of the Latin quadragenta. Okay, or quattuor, which means 4. Quadragenta is 40, and quattuor is 4. And the very first definition here says a period of 40 days. Specifically in English law, a period of 40 days during which the widow of a man dying seized of land had the privilege of remaining in her husband's mansion house, and during which time her dower was to be assigned. Again, quarantine is about merchandise, money, estate. That's the very first definition. But there's another definition that's put way down here. You know, when you're dealing with an abridged or an unabridged dictionary, which is the one that this definition comes from, unabridged means the first definition is the newest definition, and then they go all the way down to the oldest definition of that word. And so, you know, definitions 2, 3, and 4, number 2 is about the law of the sea. It's a period originally of 40 days during which a vessel arriving from an infected port or being suspected of carrying a contagious disease on board is detained in port in strict isolation. So now they're talking about vessels, and we know that they were using the law of the sea, okay, not the law of the land. Number 3 says the place where such a vessel is stationed. So a quarantine is a place where such a vessel is stationed as a noun. But it's also, okay, any isolation or restriction on travel or passage imposed to keep contagious diseases, insect pests, etc. from spreading. Now, we see these definitions right here, and, you know, we can see where in the media they've pumped up some of these definitions. Mainly number 4, but they did not tell us about number 5. Let's look at this. Number 5. Let me see, is it number 5? That's not the one that I'm interested in. Actually, it's the verb transitive right here. Quarantine as a verb transitive. It says here to put under quarantine, to cause to undergo quarantine. And then number 2 is the one I want to focus on, because they were not going to tell us that this is really what's going on. And this is in alignment with what our prophet said. Quarantine is defined as to isolate politically, commercially, etc., as an aggressor nation. They don't have to be an aggressor nation, but if they're acting as an aggressor nation, then they're isolated politically and commercially. They are quarantined. Okay, so who's being quarantined? Who is it that's being isolated politically and commercially? Let's look back at what our prophet said. He said that all nations will turn against the United States one day. Didn't he say that? They're being quarantined. Everybody else is saying stay away from the United States. Stay away from them. Them, not us, them. We're not the United States in black ink and capital letters that everyone is being quarantined against. We are not that. We are the United States in red and all lowercase letters. I'm going to go ahead and just mute a couple of the lines because there's a little bit of feedback coming from them. We are the United States in red and all lowercase letters, the original indigenous United States, okay? So what's happening now all over the earth is exactly what our prophet Noble Judicialle said was going to happen, okay? So to isolate politically, commercially, and really that means to isolate, period, in all ways. Stay away from 6 feet, social distancing, all of that. And see, we're even isolating them, the corporate, not the faces, but the corporation. So anyone acting in corporate status needs to be isolated so that the other nations of the earth can move around and we can exchange with one another and do what needs to be done. But I will tell you that the Moors who've been doing liens and court actions are the ones who've been actually assisting in bringing forth what the prophet said to do. The prophet made the prophecy. He gave the prophecy according to the ancient records. And then we said, okay, our prophet said that they're going to isolate the United States. So what did we do in 2018? 2018, we filed a lien as a nation against the United States Corporation Company. As soon as we did that, everybody started backing off. And then after so many other nations said we're not going to trade with them anymore because the Moor said don't do it. The Moor said terminate all corporate contracts. So what happened in 2019 at the end, after they saw everybody moving back and isolating them, they said, okay, we're gonna have to go ahead and implement that pandemic thing that Noble Judicialle was talking about back in the day. We're gonna have to get that started. So let's start putting the word quarantine on the news all the time. Let's put it out there. Let's make it so that when the United States Corporation Company citizens are traveling, start putting them in quarantine. So it comes down to even the individual United States Corporation Company citizens that are being quarantined, those corpses, the ones that are being in corporate status. That's another reason why we must proclaim who we really are, so that we're not, because there's another part to that quarantine piece. Or after a while, that quarantine piece for them is going to go permanent, and it's already permanent, really. They're not putting that forth because it will panic. It will cause some to go into a panic mode because they don't see what we're doing. See, before you take something all the way away, you actually have to have a replacement ready on standby, standing, and actually not even waiting, but already doing everything. And that's another reason why we had to introduce the Moorish sovereign delarium, so that people could see that there is an alternative to that fiat that has gone away. We have to, and now, okay, we're moving now towards all of the commerce and the governing of the resources, that we have to actually already be doing that. And we are. We're governing by putting out our documents, putting out our commands, and then looking at the records and saying, okay, what else do we need to do? All we have to do is look through and see what did they put forth previously. So when we look back at the things that were going on at Havana, Cuba, we can see the documents that they put out there, and so now we have a roadmap of what do we do next. Okay, we make sure that we put it on the public record that our airspace is sovereign, just like we are, and that our land is sovereign, and that this is how things are going to go on our land, and everyone has to abide by that. So that's really what quarantine is all about. And it's not going away. It's gonna bear anybody acting in corporate status, that quarantine piece is gonna be there. And in addition to that, and actually it's not even in addition, it's part of it, you're going to start seeing fiat prices go up. And it's already happening. That's a part of the quarantine too, so that after a while people will stop buying those things that are going up so high that they can't afford them, and begin naturally looking at the alternatives to that. And as always, we always find alternative ways to do things. If it's one thing about the brown skin, the heirs, if it's one thing about us, it's that if things, if we can't get it one way, then we'll make it, we'll find it, we'll create it. We've always done that. When the mothers back in the day didn't have the steak and lobster or whatever for dinner, they would just make do and make a big old pot of chili or something, a big pot of beans and rice and some pita bread or something, and everyone ate well and was full. So that is where we're going, where we're being awakened to create better ways and more natural ways of doing things by way of quarantining those things that we were dependent on before. Okay, we were dependent on the United States Corporation Company when we were minors, but now that we are majors, we have to, they're being quarantined slowly but surely. It's being done in stages and phases so that we can adjust quickly. And as long as we keep our energy clean and clear, and that's what energy clearing is for, energy clearing makes it so that the answers keep coming, so that the energies that we ask the universe for can come through. So anger and frustration, depression, and feeling helpless and feeling like you have to depend on other people outside of you, all of that needs to be cleared so that you can hear and receive the answer that you need instead of feeling like you're drowning and have to yell for help. You're not drowning. You don't have to yell for help. All you have to do is get quiet and then start listening. Clear the energy that's caused by the fear, because it's just fear that makes you feel like you're not going to make it if somebody else doesn't help you. Just get quiet, go within, and listen. Just clear that energy, clear the fear, and say, okay, ancestors, I'm going to listen to you, because we do it all the time. Harvard and whatever schools we went to did not teach us these things. The things that we are seeing in the documents, those schools didn't teach us that. That comes from getting quiet, clearing the energy, and saying, okay, ancestors, this is what I need. I need this information. Show me this. And then we get quiet, and we let them fill us with the energy so that when we go to our computers and we start typing things in and looking and researching, that the answers just pop up, and there it is. And you're like, that's what I've been looking for. I didn't know that. Okay? So whenever you hear the word quarantine, know that it's that. That's the real coronavirus situation. Okay? That's the real coronavirus. That's what this is all about. It's about political and commercial and economic quarantine of the United States corporation company so that we can continue to stand and do that for ourselves. Okay? Governing the vast estate and our resources for ourselves. Now, knowing that we are the creditors to all the nations on earth, I want to put I'm going to put a link in the chat so that we can take a look at something from back in the day that has everything to do with how the nations dealt with debtor and creditor things, and it's going to show you how we've always been the creditors to all the nations of the earth. Okay, so let me go to. I'm going to go ahead and get us to this website so we can see. Okay. We are back again at the office of the historian. And let me get that on the screen. Okay, we're back at the office of the historian, where we were the other day when we were looking at the historical documents with regard to 1928 at Havana, Cuba, where our prophet Noble Judicialle was there and he received the land mandate. The land mandate is, by definition, and by what it requires of us, is telling us that we're the heirs to all land, all natural resources, and all commerce. okay, just by virtue of what it's telling us to do, okay? So let's take a look. I want us to take a look at, this is the papers relating to the foreign relations of the United States transmitted to Congress with the annual message of the President, December 1st, 1873. Now, this was before, but this is in the same set of documents, except it's earlier. It's in 1873. This will prove that the United States Corporation Company has always known about the Moors, always known that we were the creditors to all the nations of the earth. So this is number 307. It's a letter in the Library of Congress from a Mr. Fish to a Mr. Matthews. Now, this was sent to Washington on October 23rd, 1872, which is 1 year after 1871, which is when they incorporated. Okay, so this letter is, they were in the same place that we're in now, except in the reverse. Everything was going then from being de jure to giving the appearance of being corporate. And so now you have Moors who are thinking that they're the creditor, but they're being held to this debt, and they're wondering, where is this debt coming from? We don't have debt. Let me make sure I'm at Morocco, because this is not how we do things at Morocco. And the corporations are saying, no, you owe some debt. But because the Moors didn't realize that capitalism had set in, they didn't really know how to deal with that. So let's read this letter really quickly. It says, Sir, that's how we know that this is some hypothecation. Sir, your dispatch number 80 of the 7th ultimo has been received. It is accompanied by a translation of a note addressed to you by the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Morocco, in which that functionary expresses the hope that this government will not extend its protection to one Hamed Dukali, who it seems has come to this country for the supposed purpose of obtaining the protection of the government with a view to evading obligations in Morocco. You may inform the Moorish Minister for Foreign Affairs that the Constitution and laws of the United States do not screen any foreigner who may resort to this country from debts which he may have contracted at home, but that creditors can prosecute for them here on the same terms as citizens without any hindrance from the executive government. If, however, the purpose of the communication of that government be to request us not to naturalize Mr. Dukali, it will be impractical to comply with such a request if he shall fulfill the required conditions. This government has no discretion in such a matter. The right of any foreigner to be naturalized according to law cannot be called in question. It is apprehended, however, that the Moorish government may be mistaken if it supposes that the effect of the naturalization of the person adverted to, supposing it to have taken place, would be to weaken his liability for his debts in Morocco, even if he should return to that country. He might, in that case, be prosecuted for them in the consular court, and this government is bound to resume that impartial justice would there be dispensed. I am Hamilton Fish, etc., etc. And there's nothing further with that letter. Now, remember more. People were saying consular courts were not on our land, this is our land, etc., etc. That is not true. Morocco, ancient Morocco. And again, this is 1873, before 1956 when corporate Morocco even came into being. Corporate Morocco did not exist at this time, so we know we're talking about ancient Morocco, which is our land here. And this letter is a letter where someone from the United States Corporation Company, see, whoever this guy is, he knew that there had been a switcheroo and they had capitalized the debt. He knew that. He also knew that the one that he was writing to, Mr. Matthews, did not realize that capitalization had occurred. So now he's trying to push some debt over on one of the Moors. Mr. Diall is a Moor. He's not a Mr. either. Hamed Diall was a Moor. But he went into United States Corporation Company capitalism, okay, didn't realize that there had been some capitalization of his name. His sovereign appellation had been capitalized, put in black ink in capital letters. He didn't realize that, oh, they can actually come and claim the debt because I'm pretending to be a citizen. And so this Mr. Fish guy, gentleman, and gentleman stands, it is a derivative of Gentile. This gentleman is saying to the Minister of Foreign Affairs at Morocco, and it's the Minister for Foreign Affairs. And it is foreign affairs when you're dealing with a corporation. So he's saying to the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Morocco that this guy cannot get any protection from debt, even by going to Morocco. Because they're not going to say we capitalized and tricked him, but they did. And if we don't know the difference, then we'll get caught up like this guy did too, and thinking that debts belong to us, and then you'll have somebody from the United States Corporation Company picking up the phone call and saying, they owe some debt. They have some debt here that they have to answer for. And us not knowing that we're not any name in black ink and capital letters, they'll be talking to the heirs. And if the heirs don't know, they're going to push the issue. That, yeah, the heirs have, you got debt. This guy had the audacity to speak to the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Morocco and tell him that this guy can't get protection from him. That Mr. Diall cannot get protection at Morocco from debt. When that's not true. He just has to know how to get protection. Because, see, people have been talking about protection, and government should protect their people. That is correct. Except the people have to know who they are and know that they're not any name in black ink and capital letters, and they'll be protecting themselves. Yes, Justice Yazarel, this is very telling because it is the same situation today. This situation is the same situation that Moors are facing today. And then when those corporates come and kick doors in and twist arms and push people around and throw them in jail and pull them over on the side of the road and arrest them, then the Moors want to yell, that's a violation. They're not, they're violating the law. No, Moors, we violate the law when we accept an identity in black ink and capital letters, and look how long that's been going on. This was in 1873, right after the corporate fraud happened. But somebody wasn't paying attention. Somebody didn't notice that instead of their document showing up in red ink, it showed up in black ink. And they're saying, oh, it was just a copy machine. This is still valid. Or instead of it being in all lowercase letters with a hot, wet ink signet autograph on it, It's some copy machine stuff or some carbon, and back then they used carbon copies, quote unquote, to turn everything black. This is nothing new. And the rest of the earth is saying, what are they going to learn? This has been going on for how many years? 1873? Over 100. Over 150. We get it now. We get it. And yes, it's time. It's past time. And some still want to fight the black ink and capital letters. They still want to hold on to that trademark of the dead, because that's what it is. It's a trademark of the dead. Anybody attempting to do anything that has to do with black ink and capital letters is dead. They're speaking dead. When they open their mouths, they're speaking black ink and capital letters.
Hey, Pauline, you're talking about Anoa being evicted from her apartment?
Period. Okay? So,
hey, Pauline, you're talking about
dead. Green is dead. When Moors are evicted, it's because there is a dead black ink contract on the public record somewhere. And here's the thing, it doesn't even have to be a lease agreement. It can be that the Moors signed using black ink and capital letters someplace else. Signed for unemployment, or signed for, they signed for a ticket that they got on the side of the road. That's kicking off that whole corporate thing where they say, okay, we have a contract on the public record. We got a contract, and if we got one, that means we can act in corporate status for everything else. Just one moment. Let's get back to that. It's right there. Right there on the screen. This is nothing new. Absolutely nothing new. Okay? So, we can see that this has been going on for a while. Let's kind of put a little bit more emphasis on this. So again, Hamed Dukali is a Moor in red ink and all lowercase letters, okay? And what happened was he went into citizen status somewhere with the United States Corporation Company, thinking that he was dealing with the United States in blue, the subjects. He thought he was dealing with the Republic. But the Republic had already gone, and now it's in 1871, and now it's 1872. And everyone has put sirs and Mr. and Mrs. and ma'am in front of their subject status names. That should have been a hint right there. Anytime you see Mr., Mrs., Sir, or Ma'am, you're dealing with Britain, the fraud of the fake crown. They make sure they put that forth so that you can see it. And they put it first, so that whatever is first, what starts in fraud stays in fraud. If they're calling you Mr. or Mrs. anything, that's fraud. They're trying to put a covering over you. So what they're saying here, this Mr. Fish is telling the Moorish Minister of Foreign Affairs that they hope that this government, and please note, they're saying they hope that this government, and this is how we know they're talking about Morocco, is government is in all lowercase letters. They're saying they hope that this government will not extend its protection to one Hamed Bukhari. Hope means they didn't really have a choice, and that if we say we do extend our protection, then protection is extended and they can't do anything about it. But they say we hope you don't. And then they started using some type of, you know, how they do, well, but the Constitution and the laws say this, this, and this. What Constitution was he talking about, though? Was he talking, see, his Constitution here that he referenced has a capital C. And then he said the laws of the United States, black ink and capital letters. You may inform the Moorish minister, and see, they made sure they put some capital letters there, for foreign affairs, that the Constitution and laws of the United States do not screen any foreigner who may resort to this country from debt which he may have contracted at home. It's the contracts. They're telling you here in the documents, it's the contract. That's why we terminated them. But that creditors can prosecute for them here, and he's saying creditors can prosecute them in the United States on the same terms, in Morocco on the same terms as citizens without any hindrance from the executive government. Now, the executive government he's talking about is a corporation. He's saying that that the United States doesn't screen any foreigners who may resort to the United States from debt, which he may have contracted, but that creditors can prosecute for them here. He's saying the United States has some creditor status. So the creditor status was switched. He's switching, he's hypothecating and subrogating the status of a creditor. And now he's saying if he contracted with us, the United States Corporation Company, then he's not exempt from those debts, even though he goes to Morocco with a capital M and black ink. And that's correct. That's correct. Except we're not Morocco in black ink and capital letters. We're Morocco in red and all lowercase letters, which does offer the protection. So this is some hypothecation on right out here in the open, on the record, so that we can see it. The creditor status was switched in 1871, presumably, because it never was switched. We've always been the creditor. That will never change. It's just we didn't know. And it says here, if, however, the purpose of the communication of that government be to request us not to naturalize Mr. Bukhari, what is he saying there? That's where, when you hear some of these hybrids these modern Europeans talking about their United States nationals, or quote unquote American state nationals, which none of that is valid. It's all corporate speak. It's all corporate speak. There's no such thing as a United States Corporation Company national. That doesn't even exist. And see, the United States was talking about naturalizing a Moor into United States Corporation Company citizen. They're talking about denationalizing him is what they're talking about. Denationalizing him. That's what their quote-unquote naturalization mess is. When people raise their right hand and put their hand over their heart and all of that, and stand in front of Banner of Amity and Commerce with yellow fringes on it, you're consenting to denationalization and to being naturalized by corpses. It's right there in the record. We're not making this up. They put it on the record. We're not making this up. So we have to, it's corporate, it's corpse, dead, corporation status all day. So I'll use me as an example. When back in 2006, I believe it was, when I first started working at the VA Medical Center in Durham, North Carolina, I was fast asleep. I put my hand over my heart and I raised my right hand and I took an oath to that banner of amity and commerce, and I thought, wow, I'm such a great citizen. I was fast asleep. And then I went to work and made my little fiat. Just as happy and sleep and blind. I consented to being naturalized by corpses. Thankfully, many years later, over, let's see, 13 something years later, 12 years later, actually 11 years later, in 2017, I woke up and realized who I was, and then I terminated all corporate contracts. So none of that is valid because, again, jurisdiction cannot be waived even by consent of both parties. I'm so grateful for our ancestors putting res judicata and stare decisis on the public record so that we don't get caught up in that and don't have to stay in it. So I wanted to point that out, and there's another letter, a second one that I'd like for us to take a look at also. Again, this is when the United States was really just doing their business in terms of hypothecating and tricking the heirs into accepting debt that does not belong to us, okay? So let me show you now a second letter. And this is one, now remember, and this is important, let me make sure you can see it, because this is the second letter that went between these two. And I'll tell you this, I went hunting for all kinds of letters, and you know they haven't put them out there yet. They don't want us to see them yet, but we're going to see them one day. Because there's a whole bunch of these that were put on the public record back and forth between these guys. They had to be put on the public record because it's government business, quote unquote. So this is another letter that went back and forth between these two. And if you'll notice here, for those who say that you're not supposed to have a consulate on your own land, we're the only exception to that rule. The heirs are the only exception to that rule, and the reason we're the only exception to that rule is because all land belongs to us. But we do have some foreigners on our land that are going to need to have law put in place, and it's already in place. But in case there's any conflict, we have to govern that conflict. And a consular venue, just like our Grand Sheik has said all this time, the consular venue is the venue for that. Okay? And let's just point it out one more time. The United States Corporation Company knew that. That at Morocco, because see, that's the consular court that the previous letter was talking about. It's talking about the consular court at Morocco, not the United States. Even though the United States of America Corporation had a consulate at Washington, D.C. So that proves to you there that this is not their land because they're not the heirs, they're not indigenous. So yes, they needed a consulate too. We actually should have been going to their consulate. See, their citizens and us, whenever we had a disagreement in our fleet even, we should have been going there if it was valid. But it never was valid. That's why they never said Y'all got to work your stuff out at our consulate. They never said that because they weren't even supposed to have one. We're the consulate. We're to govern according to the treaty. So let's take a look at this letter here. This letter is talking about how the hypothecation even happened. And again, this is January 22nd, 1873. They are happy as clams because 1871 happened, and the Moors were just not aware that things had changed and that capitalism had set in. So it says here, and this is Consulate of the United States of America, which, if you look that up, it used to be the State Department building at Washington, D.C. I did the research. And the State Department building in Washington, D.C. used to be the United States Corporation Company Consulate. Sir, I have the honor to inform you of an event unprecedented in Morocco, which took place at Tangier on Friday last. The marriage of a lineal descendant of Muhammad, His Highness Prince Absalom el-Hazain, Grand Sheriff of Wazan, with an English Christian lady, Miss Emily King. Oh, that's unprecedented. Unprecedented. The bride rode to the British legation, that means she went back home, the British legation on an Arab horse covered with a scarlet saddle embroidered with gold, presented to her by the bridegroom. The marriage was merely a civil ceremony performed by the British minister, and after this was over, the bride and bridegroom rode back to the Royal Victoria Hotel, where a sumptuous wedding dinner had been prepared and at which all the diplomatic and consular corps were present. It was a court action. The bridegroom, who appeared to very great advantage in his flowing Eastern dress of dark blue, was escorted by a guard of Moorish soldiers to the hotel. At the conclusion of the dinner, the happy couple betook themselves to the country residence of the prince at Mount Washington, 3 miles distant from Tangier. 3 miles distant from Tangier, Mount Washington. Hint, hint. The bridegroom is a personage of the greatest importance in Morocco. He is the supreme and hereditary chief of the powerful society of the Moor, the most important in the Mohammedan persuasion a society, the numerous members of which of both sexes are spread throughout all Muslim countries, the greater number being found in the Barbary states and Algiers. And I may also mention that this society has ramifications in the East Indies. The prince is a stout, robust man of an olive complexion, so you know what he looked like, 39 years of age, who distinguished himself greatly during the war with Spain in 1859 and 1860. He is very fond of Christians, very charitable, and remarkably intelligent. The emperors of Morocco are, for political and private reasons, members by birth of the Moor Taifa, whose supreme chief invests them with their imperial authority, consecrates them, and has also in certain instances deposed them. I beg to acknowledge the receipt of your dispatch number 48, dated the 9th of December last. I have, etc., Felix A. Matthews. What do you think, based on the terms that they're using here, What just happened? In 1873, the old amalgamation switcheroo. Someone amalgamated with a British subject, and they switched everything around in the announcement. And he is by bloodline and birthright an heir. And so just look at the language that they used. They're describing it a particular way because they keep pointing to the fact that hypothecation has taken place and that they switched everything and they're in the position of authority. Just by this court action taking place. See, the consular corps had to be there because there was a diversity of nationality and citizenship there. That's why he mentioned the consular corps. Because it's a court action. Yes, weddings are court actions. Civil ceremony. If it's a civil ceremony and he agreed to civil jurisdiction, guess what that made him? It denationalized him and gave him civil rights instead of sovereign rights. Because he consented to them doing the court action instead of it being done in his nation. Because if it had been done in his nation, she would still be in subject status and they wouldn't be celebrating and putting it on the record. And yes, it was unprecedented because we never did that. Never did we go to their courts. That's why it was unprecedented. He's telling us on the record. But again, 1871 happened. And people were not paying attention. Moors were not paying attention. We were not paying attention. We might as well go ahead and accept responsibility. We were not. Somebody fell in love and gave away the throne and all that goes with it because it was being capitalized by that British minister. That's what weddings are for. That's what a marriage license is for. It's to capitalize the heirs and all that has to do with them. Then they can pull you into their courts and take everything and hand it to a foreigner. Yes, and the Pope and the Crown slipped right in. Yes, they did. The Pope is the British minister. He's sent by the popes, the black popes of Rome, to come in and get their piece of the crown. The consular part is for the government, the fake corpse government, to get their piece of the crown. So now they can do military actions on everybody that's claiming to be under that guy. And all of the subjects that are under the bride, the one doing business as bride, see, she didn't come alone. The bride did not come alone. She brought a whole army with her. She brought the Vatican Corporation with her. She brought the Crown Corporation with her. She brought the military with her. And all of that. She didn't come alone. He was in love. Yes, she was packing. Yes, she was. Moors, listen. We are the heirs to all land, all natural resources, and all commerce. We've proven that. When you look at the land patents, our sovereign-born appellations, land patents are in the name of the heirs, and we have to put it into our sovereign appellation, which looks similar to the name. but it's not in black ink and capital letters. It's in red ink, our sovereign-born appellation. So all of us have all of this land that we are the heirs to. And when we amalgamate without the eyes being open, okay, now we're not mad at the modern Europeans. We're not mad at the men or the women. We love them. We created them. All we're saying is Moors when you're going into any relationship. Know that you're going in as the heirs and not as any subordinate to anybody. And that they're getting the benefit, not you, not economically. And be aware of that. We're not saying don't be sovereign and do whatever you want to do. You're sovereign. You can do it. You can't tell sovereigns what to do. We don't tell sovereigns what to do. We just make suggestions. You know what? In the chat, the justice says they told him that he's not wise to give up his marriage license, but he knows better. Listen, and I won't say who stated that, but I will say this. Marriage licenses never even apply to us because, again, we can't be citizens. Marriage licenses is for citizens. That's a civil document. It's for citizens, not heirs. We do matrimony. Matrimony is not the same as marriage. A license, yes, a marriage license is asking permission to be in capital letters and black ink, and it's asking permission to get with someone else, but you're also giving up all of your babies to the state and all of your rights to the state. And when I say the state, I'm talking about the corporate state, which is a dead state, which in fact makes you stateless. Whereas you never hear any of them talking about a matrimony license. You never hear them talking about that. There isn't one. With that being said, are there any questions, comments? I could really go in on this document right here. I could really go in on the language that they use, but I won't. Go ahead, Nobility.
I had, what I wanted to say was, is there any way you can check for contracts you have out there? You know what I'm saying, like past ones.
Yeah, you can check. You can check to see what the court has on them. By doing, you can send a Universal Commercial Code affidavit 11. A Universal Commercial Code 11, I believe it is. You send that to the Internal Revenue Service and put them in subject status, do it by court action, and do it by affidavit and put them in subject status. Tell them this is a Universal Commercial Code 11 affidavit, and that you want to know, what they have listed under the court's name, and you can put it as the subject name. You can put the subject name in blue and the Social Security number. Put that in blue, and don't put any dashes in between, so that they can give you. Just one moment. There's a little bit of noise coming from somewhere. Yeah. Okay. So that they will put it. So that they can give you they'll give you a rundown of everything that's attached to that social. Okay? You're not claiming the social. You're saying, what do they have on your subject? Because the one in blue is the subject.
Another question. I'm sorry, I sorry that. But I was wanting to know, what is the affidavit 11? I'm not knowing about this.
An affidavit of what?
Did you say affidavit 11?
It's a Universal Commercial Code 11.
Is that the normal lien lien paperwork that we do?
No. What it is a Universal Commercial Code 11 is where you send it to the Internal Revenue Service in blue, and you say, give me all the information that you have under Freedom for Information law, the Freedom for Information law, not the Freedom of Information Act, but the Freedom for Information law. Give us all the information you have on this subject, and you give them the name of the subject and the Social Security number. But when you put the Social Security number, don't put dashes, just put the numbers. And they will give you a listing of everything that's attached to that number. That's how you can find. That's what an 11 is. 11 is kind of like an inventory request, not a request. We don't do it as a request, but when you're doing it in UCC form, okay, if you were a citizen filling out a form, it would be a request to see what do they have that's active on that number. But we do it as a command.
So is this document available on the consulate page, or is something I have to manifest myself?
Yes, you will have to do the study on a Universal Commercial Code 11 and craft an affidavit. I love to do those types of suggestions because you're going to find out so many things you didn't know before when you do it yourself. I believe that's why our ancestors have us doing everything ourselves, because we find out so much. And it just affirms what we know in our spirit. We've known in our spirit what amalgamating and going through their processes does, but we can see it now on the public record from doing our own research, just digging things up. So, yes, you can do it that way.
Islam and
I mean, I could write one, but I'm not going to. I'd rather you do it and then put it on the public record and share it with everybody. Islam Emperor.
Islam. So this reminds me of the story of Pocahontas and James Smith. Islam. Thank you.
Yes. 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 This is how the estate was presented or represented to be given to somebody else. We never lost our estate, but they gave the appearance that we did by changing the literature from red to black, from all lowercase to capital letters. See, in this story, he had to accept their documents and their paperwork. That one doing business as a British minister gave him some documents to sign that they crafted instead of him crafting his own affidavit stating that even though I'm laying with you, the estate still belongs to me. He didn't do that. He let them do the documents and the paperwork because he was so in his feelings. And that's why we don't do feelings and beliefs. We have to look at the law. Because if we go by feelings and we're running around being led by our feelings, we'll be scared to death all the time because our feelings will be telling us one thing when the law says something different. Okay, let's just see. One of the justices put something in the chat. We'll go ahead and see if we can take a look at it.
Islam.
Islam.
To put it in a simple form, to keep everyone in a basic principle, I always try to tell myself, keep an open mind, but always keep a closed heart. So that way you can understand what is actually said out there as opposed to using. But when you use your heart open, you have to close your mind. Because both of them cannot be open.
Okay, I'm actually going to disagree. I'm going to disagree slightly disagree, partially with that.
Mm-hmm.
Partially. And the reason I say partially, nobility, is because we are the gods, and we're capable of doing things that far, far, far supersede anything that we've been taught we could do. So we actually can keep our hearts available for our brothers and sisters. We can keep our hearts. We have to keep our hearts available. Open is a different word. That's another word. That's not really the word I would use. I wouldn't use closed either. I would use available. Keep our hearts available so that we can empathize with our brothers and sisters enough to help them. However, we also have to balance that out with letting them stand on their own 2 feet and help themselves. And so when it comes to things like this story about him falling in love and just letting them just, she said, why don't we get married and let the British do the documents? Let this British minister, who's my uncle that I love so much, and I don't know if that's all what happened, but I'm sure it was presented to him like that. Then he was like, whatever you want. Whatever you want, whatever you want. We can't ever be like that. That is an open heart right there. He had an open heart. In other words, open heart meaning there was a space there that was not filled. And whenever corpses see spaces that are not filled, they fill them. They fill them.
Well, that's partially correct as well, but in interpretation, open and close has different forms as a rotation. So in balance of oneself, this is why it's mostly important to see things and unsee things. So it's just like saying, if that was the prime example, that would also be the same example of King Solomon and then misuse of his power. And then on top of that, it was just like saying, if we're going back to other stories, I always say Alexander Dubois with the man behind the Iron Mask, which is greatly exemplified in the situation of a switcheroo. But then again, we are being omitted to understand that because it's called missing perception. You don't know when it's open, and you're not supposed to know it's closed. That's why, hence, don't question it.
Samson and Delilah was another example of that in the bibliothek as well, of where, someone just got caught up and they weren't looking at the law because they were so in love. And love is great. Love is great, but we have not been taught the whole truth about it. We've not been taught the whole truth about it. Because we need to be looking at the law first. That's why we don't do feelings and beliefs. Look at the law. The law, when we put the law first, it's going to teach us love the right way and not in a way where there is any deficit of any kind. So thank you for that, nobility, because that's That's true. And the sovereigns the sovereigns can overstand that however we choose to overstand it, and then implement it in a way that works best for us, for each of us. You have to do it your way, and I have to do it my way in the way that's going to work best for whatever it is we're seeking to achieve. And it's not even seeking to achieve it; we're achieving it. Yeah, yeah.
But the biggest hint.
I don't like the open closed heart thing, because it indicates that there's space somewhere, and we know nature abhors a vacuum. And I don't want anybody trying to fill an open heart with some craziness. I want to be in control of that. I want to fill it with what I want it to be filled with.
Right. And that's between two receiving and sending. That's how they get us all the time, because it's majority is called missing perception. The missing perception is, do you get the hint before it happens?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And if we stay focused on the law, and the law becomes a reflex, then even when we're feeling all of that giddy, happy, joyous, lovey-dovey, smushy stuff, the law will still be a reflex, and we'll still say, well, hold on a minute, let's get the documents together first. We speak by affidavit. I have to do that a lot because I get really excited about the things we're doing, but I still have to keep the law first. Have to. Thank you for that, nobility. Very, very, very observant. Islam.
Islam.
This is one moment. Let me do this right here first. Justice Theodore, thank you so much. He's so quick on the draw. He has the documents right there. So this is a Uniform Commercial Code 11. It's an information request, okay? And we don't fill these out. Let's make that clear. But as you can see here, debtor name to be searched. So you put in the court's name. So what we would do is put this next to an affidavit and craft an affidavit, to fit this document. We know we don't have names. We know we're not debtors, but we can say the subject or the servant is a debtor in blue, in capitis diminutio minima, and or in black. You can put that debtor name in black, and again, making sure when on your affidavit, they will know that that's not you because you're presenting yourself in red. When you do your court action to start the affidavit, you're going to say, all rise and stand. This is a sovereign, ancient living Article 3, Moroccan, Moorish American Consular Court action. I am sovereign living justice. And you state your sovereign born appellation in red in all lowercase letters, and then you put the black thing, or not, let me see. I would put the blue one in capital letters. I would put it in blue ink in capital letters on here so that you can get the information that you need with regard to anything that's attached to that quote-unquote name and social. Okay, so again, you're doing it as an affidavit, not as this. But this is correct. This does show you that a Uniform Commercial Code 11 is what they use to get the information that shows them, you know, what's attached to the court or what's attached to the subject. Okay. Having said that, let me go back. I believe does everyone have the links to the information that we put forth today? Hopefully you have those. We did put them in the chat. We are going to put them underneath the video so that you can see where we got that information from. With that being said, again, now, as a nation, let me put this forth because this is something we're going to do in the future, and we can determine the time frame that we want to do it. But I'm putting a motion on the table for the Moors. Let's discuss a 40-day commercial quarantine from the Service Corporation and from Fiat and from all of that for all of us, for all who agree to do it in the future. 40 days where we don't go to the grocery store, we don't go to the movies or any of that. Everything that we do, we go out in nature and do it. We can say move. We spell motion a little different when we're talking about motion. Someone put in the inbox that it's a move and not a motion. We put an E on the end of motion, or we spell it M-O-S-H-U-N. So that let's just discuss it on one of the upcoming calls, a 40-day quarantine where we don't go swipe cards or use fiat at any place. And I've been thinking about maybe putting it forth and we'll just vote on it. If more don't want to do it, that's fine. But I think it's a good start in terms of quarantine. Maybe January the 1st through February the 10th, do a 40-day quarantine. Or November or we could really do some, make some things happen by doing that quarantine from November the 20th through January 1st. Somewhere around there. Or we could do it from the beginning of November to the 21st of December. As a nation, just say, we're not going to swipe cards, and we're not going to, nobody's going to use fiat for anything. We're not going to do any of that. Anything that we need to do, we're going to prepare beforehand as a nation, prepare beforehand, and then we're going to just do it. And in any entertainment that needs to be done, we're going to go out in nature and do it, or we're going to meet up with other Moors and do it, meet at one another's domiciles and have food and whatever else we want to have, but we're not going to go out. And anything we don't have, we'll just do without it for that 40 days. Believe it or not, there are some Moors who are doing this already, even involuntarily, because they don't have the fiat to go anywhere and do anything. So we can think about them while we're doing this. Okay. So that's just a proposal. Also, this coming weekend on the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd, we are fasting again. We're doing our full moon fast. It's going to be a full moon on the 22nd of August. Thank you, Justice Theodore. We are fasting this weekend. Some people fast. We normally do a 72 hours of water only. But some Moors do sun up to sundown fasting. Some Moors do fasting from TV or sugar or negativity or, whatever you want to fast from. You can fast from toxic people and just say, for these 3 days, don't come near me. Or you could fast from whatever it is that you want to fast from. And then many fast in the positive, where they are fasting to manifest things like the freedom of the Moors from incarceration. We're fasting for prosperity for our nation, continued prosperity. Our prosperity is manifesting by way of the Moor sovereign lien. Okay. So, however, whatever it is that we choose to fast from or for, we're doing it starting on the 21st, the 22nd, and the 23rd, okay, for the full moon, so that we can harness the energy of this full moon. And this full moon is said to be the most they say that it's the quote-unquote luckiest full moon of the 13 cycles of full moon. This one is supposed to be the luckiest one. Well, it's great for us. It's great for us because we're officially a nation and government. Why? Because we have our own economy. It's growing, but it's ours. It's our own economy, starting with our own money. Anyone who does not have more sovereign dollarium, please send me a text message with your email so that I can send you some more sovereign dollarium. We've caught up on those requests for the most part. We're still going through our emails, but the requests that we got by text message and on social media, we caught up with those. So everyone who's requested more sovereign dollarium on social media, you should have it by now. Please give it out freely to those around you, whoever wants more sovereign dollarium, or if you want them to see more sovereign dollarium, please feel free to forward it to them. We want as many to have it in their hands as possible. We're still making it through the emails at thegovernmente@gmail.com. Where the requests are concerned, so please be patient there, but we've caught up everywhere else. And that's what governments and nations do. Our dollarium has also made it overseas and to other places. So we're very excited about that. And know this, in conclusion of this particular meeting, we have made history, her story, all of us who have agreed to use dollarium. We've made history in that we have introduced the first gold-backed original indigenous currency that is being used more widely than any other. It's being tributed and distributed more widely than any other. All the others get their authority from us. And that's how come you did not see gold-backed currencies being used earth-wide. The yuan, they said it was gold-backed, but it was not. It was backed by paper, not by us, the indigenous. And the primogenitors had to do it first. The other nations have been preparing. We've made it happen. So Moors, you're to be congratulated for the use and tributing to yourselves of the benefits that come with being the heirs, which is having as much money as you want. That's part of being a beneficiary. So anyone who does not have it, please text me at 334-294-9828, and I will send you some dollarium. Please be patient with me when we get the text messages. It usually takes us a few days to get to them due to the volume, but we are doing it. So with that being said, peace and grand rising to the sovereign, original, indigenous, natural, divine heirs. Islam, we'll see you tomorrow.
Peace and grand rising.
Peace and grand rising.
Peace and love. Much love, much love. Lord.